Epilogue, 2008. 20 sounds bad, but it's doable. Demetrius Big Meech Flannery. In a way, Big Meech believes his brother saved him from a lifetime behind bars. Sure, the feds had amassed more evidence against Terry Flannery, and perhaps without that evidence, Meech wouldn't have been busted when he was. But in the end, Terry stood his ground. For that, Meech remains grateful. Cooped up in a suburban Detroit jail, pushing 3 years in lockup while awaiting his sentencing, Meech is quick to point to the deal that the feds dangled in front of his brother. He was offered 20 years to snitch on me, Meech says. He didn't. I don't even have the chance to ask if he was approached with a similar deal. They didn't offer me that, he says, seated comfortably on the ledge opposite a glass partition. They know that goes against everything I stand for. One thing does bother him, though. He had a public defender, Meech says of Terry with a laugh, and he got the same deal I did. As for the time he'll serve, he's banking on the judge's mercy. He doesn't even bring up the possibility of 30 years. 20 sounds bad, he says, but it's doable. As long as he lands in a federal pen near Orlando or Atlanta, he'll be satisfied. He wants to be close to his friends and family. He wants to keep tabs on the progress of his son, Demetrius Jr., the child of a girlfriend he met soon after moving to Atlanta, a woman with whom he maintained ties, despite the demise of their relationship. He also wants to make sure somehow that his parents will be okay. The hardest part about this situation is my kids and my mother and my father, he says. I just hope to come home before they pass away. Then there's his crew, the guys whom he believes will still stand up for him, even as their cases continue to unfurl in courts across the country. After all, he says, it was Terry's guys who turned on their boss, not his. You can tell by my close circle that everybody has the same values, he says. No one who was close to me said anything. He brings up only one of them by name. It's not like Blue went against me. No matter how things turn out at sentencing, he doesn't have much in the way of regrets. At the end of the day, I had a beautiful life, he says. I have a lot of memories. I wouldn't trade them for nothing. In the fall of 2008, all of BMF's big-time players would see their cases come to close. By that point, with the boss's guilty pleas behind them, crew members got a bit more relaxed about cutting deals with the government. In Atlanta, a parade of BMF affiliates were sentenced in federal court. As the 2-day hearing rolled along, it became apparent that of the 10 BMF associates, only Deron D. Shot Hall had refused to talk to the feds. Daryl Papa Taylor, the first cousin of New York-based music mogul Sean P. Diddy Combs, provided substantial assistance in the government's investigation, in exchange for which he received a 3-year sentence reduction. Papa's superstar attorney, Steve Sato, told the judge that his client, in addition to info he shared about Terry Flannery, might also be able to offer the government some insight into activities going on in the Northeast. Though he had faced 10 years, Papa got 7. None of the other deals that were cut that day were all that surprising, with one exception: Barima Blue Da Vinci McKnight. Blue was sentenced to 5 years and 4 months, a punishment that was reduced in part for his willingness to cooperate with the feds. Assistant U.S. Attorney Robert McBurney told the court that Blue, by debriefing fully and truthfully with the government, qualified for a federal safety valve, which allows the judge to hand down a sentence that's lower than the mandatory minimum. By the time Blue was debriefed, however, the government had already built most of its case against BMF. As Blue's lawyer, David McCusick, had told the court, he would have liked to cooperate if he could, but unfortunately, he did not really have any useful information. A tearful Blue then told the judge that he got involved in BMF's record label as a rapper and took a detour into BMF's cocaine syndicate. I didn't look at them as a big drug ring, Blue said. Demetrius did not show me that part of his world when I met him. I got into a big brother, little brother relationship with this guy. I came to know this man without even knowing the other side of his life. I did get in above my head. He ordered me to stay away from anything illegal that they were doing, and that's what I did. Blue wasn't the only rapper tied to BMF whose name came up in federal court that year. During the cocaine conspiracy trial for Blue's co-defendant and Meech's third-in-command, Fleming Ill Daniels, another revelation concerning a rapper was made. One of the witnesses who took the stand against Ill was Ralphie Sims, who'd been a regular at Meech's stash houses. Ralphie had been indicted the year before in a related federal drug case out of LA, and he told the jury that in exchange for his truthful testimony against Ill, he hoped to receive a reduced sentence. Ralphie said his job was to unload BMF's cocaine from the limos outfitted with secret compartments. He said he piled as many as 100 bricks at a time in the basement of Space Mountain. He said that on one occasion, in the fall of 2004, he was ordered by BMF managers Chad Jabo Brown and Martez Tito Berth to set aside multi-kilo shipments for 2 customers. When U.S. Attorneys McBurney asked who those customers were, Ralphie gave 2 names: William Doc Marshall, who testified earlier in the trial, and Jeezy. "The musician named Young Jeezy?" McBurney asked. "Yes," Sims answered. Jeezy hasn't been charged with a crime in relation to Ralphie's allegation, and the Justice Department declined to comment on whether there's an open investigation into the rapper. Scott Lehman, the New York-based lawyer who represented Jeezy on weapons charges out of Miami in 2006, charges that were later dropped, also declined to comment. As for Ill, he was convicted of a cocaine conspiracy charge and sentenced to 20 years. Meanwhile, the murder case against him, the one stemming from the shooting death in the Velvet Room parking lot of Rashanabal Prince Drummond, was repeatedly postponed. Part of the delay had to do with Ill's lawyer recusing himself from the case after NFL star Adam Pac-Man Jones, a friend of Ill's who'd been covering his attorney's fees, quit making the payments. On September 12, 2008, inside a small courtroom on the 2nd floor of the Theodore Levine Federal Courthouse in downtown Detroit, an anxious crowd gathered to witness the symbolic end of the government's investigation into the Black Mafia family. One of the bailiffs barked a succinct order: "No outbursts." A moment later, a team of U.S. Marshals escorted into the courtroom a slender man, gazing straight ahead through rimless glasses. "That's your Uncle T," one of the onlookers, Lucille Flannery, whispered to her grandson sitting next to her. The bespectacled man, Lucille's son, was hardly recognizable as he made his way to the defense table. From the time he was locked up 3 years ago, Terry Southwest T. Flannery had lost close to 100 pounds. Shuffling close behind him in a matching orange jumpsuit was Terry's older brother. Meech's hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and the tattooed letters BMF peeked above his collar on the left side of his neck. He scanned the courtroom, turned to his supporters, and flashed a wide smile. With the 2 Flannery brothers seated in front of him, U.S. District Court Judge Avern Cohn called the sentencing hearing to order. He asked to hear from Terry first. The fallen kingpin spoke in a quiet, steady voice. He said he was sorry he wasted the feds' time. "I'd like to apologize to the government for my ignorance and for having them spend countless hours working this case," he said. "I'd like to apologize to the many families hurt by the result of this ignorance." Judge Cohn's response was sharp. "I think you're a very lucky man that it took the government this long to build a case against you." He sentenced Terry to 30 years. As Terry was cuffed and led out of the courtroom, Meech and his attorneys were asked to approach the bench. They were hopeful that the judge would treat them differently. Meech's Atlanta-based lawyer, Drew Finling, reminded the judge that Meech had requested a meeting with Terry shortly after Meech decided to enter a guilty plea. During the meeting, Meech advised his brother to do the same, an act that would spare the government a lengthy, expensive trial. Assistant U.S. Attorney Dawn Eisen then piped up that Meech shouldn't be credited for Terry's contrition. Eisen said it wasn't Meech who persuaded Terry to plea. She said it was Terry's father, Charles Flannery, who was about to start on a short prison stint of his own. When it came time for Meech to address the judge, he too apologized. "I don't think I'm sorry is really the right words to say, because most people is only sorry they get caught. So I just ask that you show me as much leniency as possible so that I can get on and do my time." The judge quickly gave Meech the same sentence he handed Terry, 30 years. Under current law, Meech will be at least 61 and Terry 59 when they're released from prison.